Hi, this is Kate Crumbar, and I'm here with my final lesson and technology integration plan. So I will be doing a lesson over second grade leveled math. The content standard is 2.numbers in base 10 EBT.B.6. And this standard is they want students to be able to add up to 4 two-digit numbers using strategies based on place value and properties of operations. So for this lesson that I put together, the teacher will need their lesson plan that I have created and will submit in another document, a whiteboard and a marker, a worksheet for the class, their computer. They will need to prepare a Kahoot, and they will also need to be using the online tool ClassWise, and we'll go over those in a little bit. The student materials, the students will need pencils, scratch paper, the worksheet that the teacher gives them, their computers, and they will need the link to the Kahoot, and they'll also be using an application called Flashcard Online for this lesson. So for their bell ringer, whenever they first get into class, that's when they're going to be playing the Kahoot. This will also be used as their pretest, and their results will be used for a little bit of a later purpose when it comes to grouping and working together in collaboration. But the Kahoot will have multiple addition problems of different two-digit numbers, anywhere from adding 2 add-ins to 4 add-ins together. And the students' results, again, like I said, will analyze them and be using them for a later purpose. So the GRR framework, how is that involved in this lesson? So as far as focus instruction, the teacher will basically start the lesson by introducing the new topic to the students, and they will establish the overall purpose of the lesson. And the students will be able to ask any questions, ask about any key terms, that sort of thing. So the teacher will be able to go through examples with the class on their own, and they will go over any key words, key items that the students need to know, and kind of just get the lesson started. So it'll be a solely teacher-instructed portion. And then for the transition into the next framework, the teacher will provide students with a new problem and ask students to solve it with a partner. So instead of just the teacher doing the work on her own or his own to demonstrate it to the class, they will ask the students to solve it with a person working next to them, and then they will do something with that in a little bit. So the next stage is guided instruction. And this is where the teacher will walk the class through the problem that they previously did in the formative assessment transition. They'll go through that problem together. The teacher will ask the students questions about how to solve the problem instead of doing it for them and giving them prompts like, okay, what do I do next? How did we get here? What's our next step? That sort of thing. So the students will follow along with the solving of this problem and see if they're correct, and then they'll use the prompts and the cues that the teacher gives them to help correct any mistakes that they may have had in their work. And to transition into the next phase, which is collaborative learning, where the students work together, the students will be given 2 more problems to do with their partner, and they're going to solve these again just like they did previously, but instead of going over them as a class, instead of having the teacher solve the answer, they're going to compare their answers with another group. And if they don't have the same answers, they're going to reason with one another as to why which answer is right. So during the collaborative learning, after that activity, the teacher will create groups of 4 to 5 students based on their readiness levels. And in this phase, the Kahoot that we talked about earlier, those results can be used to help group the students together based on how well they did. It also depends on what problems were assigned in the Kahoot. So you just have to be aware of that whenever you're making your groups, and you also have to be aware of your students' ability to do addition. But since we don't have actual students in this case, there are no groups. So they will assign the students to do 5 problems in their respective groups based on those readiness levels. The teacher will be able to answer any students that the questions have, but during this phase, it's mostly student-led, so the students will work together in their groups to solve these 5 problems. And then once those problems are solved, each group will have the same problems. They'll trade with another group and evaluate their work to see if they did it right. So the group they worked with previously, they will switch to a new one and have them reevaluate their work. And then these groups can offer their own prompts and cues to help that group solve it correctly instead of just solving it for them. And then the final phase is independent practice, and to transition into independent practice, the students will review and evaluate the feedback that they received from a different group and use that feedback to help them as the teacher goes back over the answers and the correct steps to solve it. And then the last stage is independent practice, and this is where the teacher will assign the homework sheets for the students to do for the remainder of the class time, and then whatever problems are not complete will be done as homework, so the kids can use their knowledge on what they've already learned and use the feedback that they learned, and what mistakes they were making and what they were doing well to help complete their homework sheet. And during this time, the teacher can be used to ask questions and guide the students, but this is all independent practice. They will not be working in groups. They're going to be working individually and using their own tools to solve their problems. And so the next phase would be doing a summative assessment to test the kids' knowledge. So a transition to see how they're doing, where they're at. The students will create their own flashcards in their groups, the groups that they've worked with in 4 to 5, to create multi-number addition flashcards to practice with their group. So they'll be able to create their own questions, choose the number of add-ins, choose what numbers they want to add, and they will use these flashcards to quiz each other to help prepare them for the summative assessment. And so this will just be a short little exam. This could even be, something that the book has, or it could even be something that you make up, like a 10-problem little assessment, just to see if they got it, and if they didn't, you can go back and reevaluate the next day, or however the teacher chooses to do that. But it would be smart to put a mix of multiple choice standard algorithm and word problems to really assess whether students have learned the concept or not, because if they haven't, they may not be able to assess those word problems as easily. So I think that having all 3 options would be a great way to assess if these students are ready to move on. If they're not, again, it's perfectly okay to go back and reevaluate. If not, you will know that your students are ready to move on to the next topic. So differentiation in this assignment, like we talked about, differentiation will mainly be demonstrated throughout the collaborative learning stage and through the flashcard activity, because they will be placed in those groups of 4 to 5. And differentiation can be picked out through how the teacher knows their students, how well the teacher understands the student's ability to do things, and also the Kahoot results from earlier will also be able to help determine the groups based on their ability to do that addition. And like I said earlier, the same groups that were used for the collaborative learning stage will also be used to make the flashcard groups, because they are in that same readiness level. So it would help them to work with students of their ability, and it gives those kids a chance to be able to work with those kids and receive their own feedback from someone who is on the same level as them. So collaboration, we've also talked about this a little bit. So collaboration will be done working in groups. So they're going to be working with a partner during the guided practice, and they're going to be working with a group of partners during the collaborative learning stage. They'll be able to assess and create problems and solve problems and look at each other's work. And then, of course, they also are able to collaborate with their own teacher, getting feedback on any questions they have about any certain problems. So there's lots of collaboration between one another and between the student, which is fantastic. You want to be able to have an open line of communication with your students, and you want them to be able to have open lines of communication with each other. And it gives them an opportunity to give and take constructive criticism. So collaboration in this case is very important. So formative assessments, we've talked about those. So the transition activities for focused instruction is that the teacher will provide students with a problem and ask students to solve it with the partner next to them. And during this phase, the teacher will be able to ask questions and use student responses as a way of tracking how students are understanding the new task. So if they're not able to respond in an appropriate manner, you'll know that your students maybe aren't getting it. During guided instruction, like we said, the students are going to be given 2 additional problems, and another set of 2 partners will be evaluating theirs, and then they'll be going over them as a class. During this, while the students are solving, the teacher will walk around the room, make sure that the students are working together, and see how they're solving them. This will give the teacher an idea if they can collaborate effectively and if they are solving it right, and which groups are getting it and which groups kind of aren't getting it. During collaborative learning, they are going to get in those groups of 4 to 5 and get the feedback from their groups. And so the teacher will keep an eye on the group's work and use that information to see how students are doing with the concept. So she or he is going to be able to give them lots of time to work and practice and solve these problems on their own and use their work and what they are seeing as a place marker of how the kids are kind of doing in this subject. And then the last one, we talked about how they're going to make their flashcards. So the teacher will be able to get answer student questions, monitor student work using ClassWise, and grade the worksheets that it was given for homework to assess student knowledge. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the technologies in this. So Kahoot, like we said, is going to be used part of a pretest to test students' ability to add 2-digit numbers with up to 4 add-ins. It gives kids a fun incentive to try to win and try to do the best that they can, and it gives teachers results to help group them based on their knowledge of the topic. In those end results of Kahoot, they can use those and group their students accordingly. ClassWise, this is a new one that I have learned about. So ClassWise it's a classroom management software through a program called LineWise, which is a content filtering and cybersecurity program that is made for schools. This allows teachers to monitor what their students are doing on their computers at all time. We are in a technology-driven world, and most schools have their own laptops, typically Chromebooks, and they are school district given. So ClassWise is done through school districts. So if your school district has computers, they can purchase a membership, or I'm not exactly sure what it is called, but they can purchase this program through LineWise called ClassWise, and it gives teachers a way of monitoring their students' screens on their Chromebooks. It gives them real-time access to see if their students are on task, see if they're understanding it, and make sure that they are doing what is asked of them. So the school district registers all these computers, all these accounts for ClassWise, and the teacher logs in with that and can see what each and every one of their students are doing. And this also gives the teacher a way to essentially be in all places at once, because they can see all of their students' work and all of what their kids are doing on their computer all at one time, while still being able to answer any questions that may arise. So ClassWise is a great tool that teachers can use as a very quick formative assessment, because all they have to do is look at their computer screen, log in, and see what their kids are doing. And then the last one, the third technology for students, is Flashcard Online. So this is a really fun website because it gives students the option to create their own flashcards. They could use this for any subject. You can add pictures, you can add numbers, you can add your own words, you can add whatever you want. And they'll be creating these flashcards for a post-lesson formative assessment to prepare for the summative assessment. And this activity encourages students to work with one another, and it tests their creative abilities and evaluation of addition problems. So this is just, it's a free online website that kids can use. All they have to do is go to Flashcard Online and type in, the problems that they want to come up with. They can pick between 2, 4, and 8 cards. Depending on time, you could have them pick, 4 if they didn't have that much time, or 8 if they had a little extra time, or have them make 2 sets. So they really have the freedom of creativity in doing this, and they also get the satisfaction of creating their own problems and evaluating them. So this is a great tool that students can use online on their Chromebooks. And so my final reflection ideas from this. So to determine if the lesson was successful, I believe that the students' summative assessment will be a big teller of that. If they score around 75 to 80% of the questions right, I would say that the lesson was successful. So the exam, like I said, should have a mixture of multiple choice, standard algorithm, and word problems to assess student learning. And I believe that if it was successful, students will get at least 3/4 of this assessment right. And they should also be able to explain a math problem without hesitation, or really without any prompts or cues. Maybe one every now and then is okay. But students should be able to explain what they're doing, why they are doing it, and they should be able to put it into real-world context. And that also comes from the teacher giving them examples and providing them with the proper tools and resources they need to be able to do that. So I think that this could be very successful, and this activity and lesson could be very successful for those second graders, because it gives them the power of technology, and yet they're also learning how to do math and collaborate at the same time.